There's a point when fear stops escalating. It doesn't go away, it doesn't calm down, it simply changes function. That's what happened after the voice said, "You already did." Fear stopped being something I felt and became something that worked on me, like a pressure system, adjusting my thoughts, narrowing my options, hurting my behavior. I wasn't panicking anymore, I was being managed. The weight in the air didn't lift when I knelt, it redistributed. My muscles burned with the effect of staying still, as if ever stillness required permission now. I realized something then that made my stomach hollow out. Nothing I had experienced so far had been accidental. The tape, the clearing, the footprints, the folded clothes. Those weren't warnings, they were tests, and I had been answering them without knowing the questions. I stood up slowly, keeping my movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. Every instinct screamed not to make myself taller, not to draw attention, but another instinct, older, quieter, insisted that shrinking would only teach the wrong lesson. The forest adjusted when I rose. Branches creaked above me, not threatening, just recalibrating. Shadows lifted to maintain their angles. The pressure around my chest eased slightly, like a grip loosening just enough to allow breath. That's what, when I clicked, it was reacting to posture, not dominance, not submission, orientation. I remembered the backwards footprints, the way it approached without ever turning toward me, the way it arranged itself relative to my movement. It wasn't stalking prey, it was aligning perspectives. I spoke carefully, choosing words the way you choose steps on ice. "You're not hunting me." The forest didn't answer, but something changed. The breathing had felt everywhere condensed, localized, no longer ambient, no longer atmospheric, focused. "You're evaluating," I continued. The word felt right the moment I said it. Something shifted above me again. Leaves rustled, not from wind, but from weight being redistributed. I was no longer alone in my thoughts. That realization didn't come with a voice. It came as a subtle resistance inside my own mind, like pushing against a current you hadn't noticed until it opposed you. Ideas that weren't mine brushed past, not images, not commands, criteria. I saw flashes of moments, too fast to call visions, too structured to be imagination. People entering the pines, people noticing too much, people who didn't panic immediately, people who didn't leave when they should have. Most of them didn't die. That was the shock. They disappeared, removed, repositioned, integrated. My mouth went dry. "You don't kill everyone," I said. The forest leaned in, not physically, conceptually. "No," the voice said. Single word, flat, certain. The sound came from in front of me now, but not from a mouth. It resonated through trunks and soil and the air between them, vibrating my teeth. "What do you do with them?" I asked. Silence stretched, not hostile, not withholding, calculating. Then, slowly, understanding pressed into my awareness, heavy and cold. It used them, not as food, not as vessels, as references, as anchors. The Jersey Devil wasn't one being, it was a role, a function that required calibration across time, and sometimes it needed human context to adjust itself to a changing world. My legs nearly gave out. "That's why they come back wrong," I whispered. "The missing hikers, the survivors who measured doorways, who avoided mirrors, who stopped eating meat, who listened to forests like they were conversations. The ones who never fully returned to human orientation." The forest did not confirm. It didn't need to. I had crossed another boundary, this one cognitive. I wasn't being hunted. I was being considered. Something descended from the branches then, not fully, not revealing itself, but enough that I could sense scale, mass without impact, presence without displacement. It stood in front of me now. I still couldn't see its face clearly. My eyes slid away from details, refusing to resolve them, like my brain knew clarity would cost something irreversible. But I could feel where its attention rested, on my chest, on my head, on the space around me, measuring again. Clearance. Why me? I asked, hating how small the question sounded. The answer didn't come as sound, it came as memory. My first night, the way I hadn't looked up, the way I'd sat instead of run when it stood behind me, the way I'd knelt instead of fleeing when shown the folded clothes. I hadn't been brave, I had been correct. The Jersey Devil didn't need believers, it needed people who adjusted, people who could hold two truths at once without breaking. You're changing, I said slowly. The world's changing, and you don't fit cleanly anymore. The pressure increased, not threatening, but intense, like standing too close to something powerful. Yes, it said. The word resonated deeper than the last. Then came the question, not spoken, imposed. Can you hold this without turning away? My vision blurred, not from tears, but from overload. Images pressed in, highways slicing through forests, towns expanding, lights erasing night, maps tightening the world into grids and permissions. And through it all, the pines resisting, folding, refusing full integration. A boundary place in a boundary age. I realized then that if I said yes, truly yes, I would never leave unchanged. And if I said no, I might not leave at all. My answer came out before I fully understood it. I can listen, I said. Not serve, not stay, not believe. Listen. The pressure released slightly, not approval, interest. Something shifted in the forest's rhythm. The breathing decoupled from mine. The shadows loosened their grip. I had passed another test. But I understood now, this wasn't progression toward safety. This was progression toward assignment, and whatever came next would not be optional. Listening sounds passive. People imagine it as stillness, patience, humility. What no one tells you is that real listening is violent. It dismantles you. It forces things inside your head to occupy the same space even when they were never meant to touch. The moment I said I can listen, the forest changed its posture toward me, not relaxing, reconfiguring. The pressure didn't vanish, it redistributed again, spreading outward, thinning near my chest and thickening around my skull. My ears popped softly, like I'd changed altitude without moving. Then the sound came. Not immediately. First, there was a sensation, a vibration beneath my feet, subtle enough that I thought it was my pulse echoing back through the ground. Then a tightening in my jaw, an ache behind my eyes, the kind you get before a migraine. Then the scream began. Calling it a scream is wrong, but language doesn't offer anything better. A scream implies expulsion, air forced out violently, pain escaping a body. This was the opposite. This was drawn inward. It felt like the forest inhaled a sound that already existed and dragged it through itself, stretching it across distance in time until it tore. The pitch was high enough to hurt, but layered, not one note. Dozens stacked imperfectly. Some of them sounded human, some sounded animal, some sounded like machinery grinding under strain. And threaded through all of it was something worse, recognition. My knees hit the ground before I decided to kneel. The scream didn't deafen me, it tuned me. Every nerve felt exposed, vibrating sympathetically like strings pulled too tight. Images slammed into me, not visions, memories, not mine. I felt childbirth pain that wasn't attached to a body I recognized. the panic of something being forced into the world unfinished. I felt limbs that didn't know how to arrange themselves, wings that hurt because they remembered not existing. I felt the first scream it ever made, that scream, the one in the stories. Except now I understood it wasn't rage, it was orientation failure. Imagine waking up knowing you were meant to be a door and discovering you were a wall. Imagine being built to open something and finding yourself sealed. That was the scream. The Jersey Devil wasn't screaming at me, it was letting me hear itself. I clutched the sand, fingers digging until grit filled my nails. The ground felt warm again, pulsing faintly, like a massive heart beating far below. I tasted copper. Blood ran from my nose, dripping onto the sand in dark, perfect circles. The scream intensified, then fractured. Individual threads peeled away from it, each carrying a different context. A settler vanishing in 1762, a child found wandering barefoot in 1821, a soldier in 1909 firing bullets that passed through air that refused to behave, a hiker in 1994 mirroring doorways until his marriage collapsed under the strain. All of them heard this sound, not with their ears, with the parts of themselves that understood wrongness. I understood then why people came back altered. They weren't traumatized, they were recalibrated. The scream wasn't meant to terrify, it was meant to align. The sound cut out abruptly, not fading, not resolving, just gone like a switch flipped. I collapsed forward, forehead pressing into the sand. My body shook uncontrollably, not from fear but from aftershock. For a long time, nothing happened. Then something touched the back of my neck. Not claws, not skin. Air displaced carefully, deliberately, measuring temperature, tension, resistance. The voice returned, closer now than it had ever been. That is what listening costs. I couldn't speak. I didn't trust my mouth to produce anything human. Images still echoed behind my eyes. Fragments of wrong births, wrong turns, wrong survivals. The burden of continuity pressed in on me, heavy as wet earth. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my head. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Not all of it. Enough. The head was closer to a horse's skull than any animal I knew, but elongated, refined, as if revolution had been guided by intention rather than chance. The eyes were reflective, not glowing, mirrors that showed me myself slightly misaligned. The wings were folded tight, jointed wrong, scarred where they had rubbed against trees in time, and the legs bent backward. Yes, but they were planted with absolute certainty. It didn't loom, it didn't threaten. It observed me the way a scientist observes an instrument they might rely on. You understand now, it said, not a question. I swallowed hard, my throat felt flayed. I understand that you were never meant to be this. I said, the air vibrated, yes. And that you're still adjusting, yes. And that people like me, I stopped, afraid of finishing the sentence. The Jersey Devil tilted his head, and variables, I finished. It considered that then something unexpected happened. It stepped back, not retreating, making room. The forest around us shifted subtly, like an audience leaning away to give a stage space. You will leave, it said. Relief almost broke me, but not whole. The word landed heavy. You will remember, it continued, and you will carry your intention with you. You will speak carefully. You will notice where others cannot. I shook my head weakly. I didn't agree to that. It leaned closer again, just enough for me to feel its breath disturb the air. You already did. The scream returned then, not as sound, but as echo, settled, embedded, something permanent locked into place inside me. And I knew with a certainty that made my hands tremble that this wasn't the climax, this was preparation. There's a difference between being shown something and being allowed to understand it. Understanding requires ownership, responsibility, consequence. What the Jersey Devil did next was more careful than that. It exposed me. The forest didn't part like a curtain. It didn't transform dramatically. Instead, it lost a layer, like someone peeling a transparency off a map to reveal what had always been underneath. The trees remained, the ground remained, but the relationships between things shifted. Distances stopped behaving. A tree that should have been 30 yards away felt arm's length. The clearing I stood in stretched and compressed depending on where my attention landed. Perspective collapsed inward, then snapped wide again. My vision blurred at the edges, not from light, but from too much information trying to occupy the same frame. Don't try to follow, the Jersey Devil said, its voice now oddly gentle. You will not be able to. What am I seeing? I asked. Outcome, it replied, without narrative. The word hit me like a cold wind. Outcome, not future, not prophecy. Result. I saw roads first. Not roads as humans draw them, but as scars, lines of pressure pressed into the land, redirecting movement, choking off older pathways. I saw highways glowing faintly, not with light but with insistence, an unspoken demand that everything move faster, straighter, simpler. I saw towns grow like mold around intersections, lights pulsed in rhythms that made the forest recoil, and I saw the pines bend, not retreating, adopting, folding space into itself to maintain something essential. The Jersey Devil wasn't guarding territory, it was guarding functionality. I saw people enter the pines in different eras, overlapping like reflections in wrapped glass. A woman from the 1840s stepped into a space that also contained a teenager from 2037. They didn't see each other, they weren't meant to. Time wasn't broken here, it was layered. You hold edges, the Jersey Devil said. Edges require maintenance. I felt a wave of vertigo roll through me. My stomach lurched as gravity briefly forgot which direction it preferred. I can't do this, I whispered. You're not doing it, it replied. You're seeing it. The distinction mattered. I saw failures, places where the forest couldn't hold anymore, places where the boundary thinned too far. I saw things cross that were not meant to, not monsters, processes. Urban density collapsing into rural quiet and tearing it apart. Human attention flattering noise replacing signal. And in those failures, the scream returned, not as sound, but as systemic distress. The Jersey Devil existed where the system broke. It was not unique, it was necessary. My head throbbed, blood still crusted beneath my nose, drying uncomfortably. Why show me this? I asked. The answer came slowly, deliberately, because you will see others who begin to notice. I thought of conspiracy forums, of paranormal podcasts, of hikers filming tree lines for views. Most of them are wrong, I said. Yes, and dangerous. Yes. The forest darkened slightly as if clouds had passed overhead, though the sky remained unchanged. They seek shape, the Jersey Devil continued. They want monsters, faces, names, something they can reduce. I swallowed, and what happens to them? They break orientation. I saw it then. People who stared too hard, who forced meaning where it couldn't survive, who demanded explanation instead of relationship. They didn't die, they unraveled. Lives collapsing quietly, relationships dissolving without clear cause, careers ending over small, inexplicable choices. A slow social exile. They never know why, I whispered. They're not meant to, the Jersey Devil said. The weight of it pressed down on me. This wasn't horror. This was administration. Cold, necessary, unforgiving. I saw myself in the projection, walking out of the pines older than when I entered, slightly off tempo, not broken, but misaligned enough to notice. I saw moments in my future where I'd stop someone from asking the wrong question at the wrong time, where I'd redirect curiosity without explanation, where I'd choose silence and feel sick afterward. "You're not asking me to stay," I said slowly. "No, you're asking me to buffer." The word felt right. Yes, a human margin, a soft boundary that absorbed impact before it reached something brittle. I laughed weakly. The sound came out wrong, too thin. I didn't want a legacy. The Jersey Devil's eyes reflected me again, but this time I saw something else in them. Recognition. "You already have one," it said. The forest began to settle. The layers slid back into place. Distances behaved again. Trees resumed their proper relationships. The projection ended. I was back in the clearing, knees aching, throat raw, heart hammering. "You will leave at dawn," it said. "You will not return. And if I talk," I asked, "you will choose your words carefully." The implication was clear. I nodded. The Jersey Devil stepped back, dissolving into shadow and branch, and breathed until it was no longer a shape, only presence. The forest exhaled, and for the first time since entering the pines, I slept, not peacefully, but completely. I woke before dawn, not to sound, but to absence. The forest had gone quiet in a way that felt deliberate, not natural. No insects, no birds. Even the wind seemed to have stepped away, as if the pines were holding their breath. For a moment, panic flared, the instinctive terror of someone who has learned that silence can be louder than screams. Then I remembered. I remembered the layers, the scream that wasn't a scream, the word buffer settling into me like a splinter that won't work itself out. I sat up slowly, muscles stiff, head pounding with a dull, constant ache. My clothes were damp with dew, my hands still gritty with sand and dried blood. The clearing looked ordinary again, too ordinary. That's when I noticed the footprints. They circled the clearing at a distance, deep and deliberate, pressed into the soft earth as if to mark a perimeter. They didn't approach me, they didn't retreat, they stood watch. I rose carefully, testing my balance. The forest did not resist this time. No pressure, no adjustment. I felt allowed. "You're awake," the voice said. It came from behind me, but I didn't turn. I had learned enough to know that orientation mattered more than eye contact. "You said I would leave at dawn," I replied. "Yes." "Then why you are still here?" A pause. "Because you are still here." That answer settled uncomfortably. "You could have killed me," I said, "at any point." "Yes." "You didn't." "No." I waited. The silence stretched. Finally, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since the projection ended. "Why do you let anyone live?" The forest shifted, not with menace, with something closer to resignation. "Because death is inefficient." The bluntness of it stole my breath. "I'm not punishment," it continued. "I'm correction." The words didn't carry emotion, they carried policy. I turned then, slowly. It stood at the edge of the clearing, fully visible now in the gray pre-dawn light, without darkness to obscure it. The wrongness of its proportions was more pronounced. The way its wings attached slightly too high, the way its spine curved with functional intent rather than beauty. It looked tired, not physically, structurally. "People think you're a monster," I said. I am a symptom, it replied. Of course it was. I thought of the stories, the devil child, the cursed birth, the flying terror haunting the pines, all of it mythologized pain into something people could fear without understanding. You exist because something failed, I said. Yes. And you persist because it keeps failing. Yes. I swallowed hard. And me? The Jersey Devil stepped closer, close enough now that I could feel the subtle displacement of air around it. You live because you can absorb error without propagating it. I frowned. You mean I don't spread it? You contain it. The distinction made my stomach twist. I thought of the people I'd seen in the projection, the ones who noticed too much, the ones who demanded clarity, the unraveling lives. They don't get the choice, do they? I asked quietly. They choose differently, it said. They insist. I let that sit. What would have happened if I ran? I asked. The Jersey Devil tilted its head slightly. You would have survived, it said, but you would not have left. A chill ran through me. You don't mean you would have remained oriented to us. The words carried weight. You would have become another anchor, another function, another presence folded into the system. I didn't want this, I said again, more quietly this time. No one does, it replied. That is why it works. The sky lightened incrementally, a pale wash of gray bleeding into blue. The forest stirred, birds testing the air, insects reintroducing themselves cautiously, normalcy rebooting. You said I won't return, I said. You will not be able to, it corrected. My heart sank. Why? Because you will not be welcome, it said. You will disrupt alignment. That hurt more than I expected. The pines had changed me, and now they rejected me for it. Is this goodbye? I asked. The Jersey Devil considered the question. No, it said. This is deployment. The word landed like a sentence. You will go back to human structures, it continued. You will feel wrong in them. You will notice cracks others ignore. You will intervene without recognition. I shook my head slowly. You're making me sound like some kind of maintenance, it finished. I laughed softly, bitterly. That's not a life. It's a function, it replied. The sun crested the horizon, light filtering through the trees in long golden shafts. The clearing looked almost beautiful now, peaceful, even. You could stop, I said. You could let the forest collapse into what humans are making it. The Jersey Devil's eyes reflected the sunrise. And then what would replace it? It asked. I had no answer. The footprints around the clearing began to fade as the light strengthened, sinking back into the earth as if they'd never been there. You will forget some things, it said. That is mercy. What won't I forget? I asked. It stepped back, already dissolving again into shadow and bark and breathe. That you were allowed to leave, it said. And why? Then it was gone. The forest exhaled fully this time. Birdsong erupting, wind returning, life resuming as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. I stood alone in the clearing, heart heavy, mind altered, and I understood then. It let me live because I could carry the weight without becoming the thing that carried me. Leaving wasn't immediate. That's the first thing people misunderstand when they hear I walked out. Departure implies agency, choice, clean separation. What actually happened was a gradual unthreading. The forest didn't push me away. It loosened its grip incrementally, like hands uncurling one finger at a time, testing whether I would fall without them. I walked for hours, though the sun never seemed to move properly. Time resumed behaving, but reluctantly, like an employee coming back from strike. Every few minutes I'd feel it, a gentle resistance behind my eyes. a pressure in my chest, and then it would ease, as if something were checking whether I still had held alignment. I didn't see the Jersey Devil again, but I felt it, not watching, accounting. The demand came before I reached the road. It wasn't voiced. It didn't arrive as command or threat. It arrived as clarity, the most dangerous form of agreement, because by the time you recognize it, refusal would require you to lie to yourself. I stopped walking without knowing why. The forest thinned ahead of me, trees spacing out just enough that I could see the road through them, a pale ribbon of gravel and asphalt cutting cleanly across something that had never consented to being divided. Freedom was 10 steps away. That's when the understanding logged into place. The forest didn't ask for silence, it asked for discretion. There's a difference. Silence is absence, discretion is curation. I understood then what my role actually was. Not to spread warnings, not to expose truths, not to convince anyone, but to intercept, to notice moments where curiosity turned predatory, where attention became extractive, where people stopped listening and started demanding. I would not stop them with authority. I would stop them with tone, with doubt introduced gently, with stories framed incorrectly, with emphasis placed in the wrong places. I would misalign the obsessed just enough that they lost the thread. That was the cost. That was the exchange. You don't guard a boundary by building walls. You guard it by making people lose interest before they reach it. The weight of that settled on me as I stepped onto the road. Immediately, something changed. The forest released me completely, not rejection, completion. The pressure vanished, the constant awareness receded, not gone, but dormant, like a sense you don't use until it's needed. I felt smaller, less significant, human again, and that frightened me more than anything that had happened inside the pines, because now I understood what I had been carrying. The road led to a ranger station a mile out. I reached it by late morning, dirty, dehydrated, bleeding lightly from the nose and ears. The ranger who found me didn't ask many questions. That wasn't coincidence. People really do when you look like a problem they don't want. I gave him a version of the truth, incomplete, imprecise, unsatisfying. I got lost. My equipment failed. I panicked. I followed animal trails until I found the road. He nodded too quickly. He wanted it to be enough. Everyone does. I didn't go home immediately. I stayed in a motel 2 towns over, staring at walls that felt too flat, too final. I slept in short bursts and woke with the sensation that something important had almost been remembered. When I turned on the television, I noticed how often the volume was too loud, how lighting flickered in patterns that made my jaw tighten. I began to recognize early signs, not of monsters, of misalignment. A man at a diner who kept asking locals about disappearances, leaning forward too eagerly. A podcast host who described the pines with too much certainty. A YouTuber planning a night shoot, joking too loudly to mask fear. I didn't confront them. I redirected. A suggestion here, a discouraging anecdote there, a detail altered just enough to soar the pursuit. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Those are the ones I still think about. The forest never contacted me again. It didn't need to. The demand wasn't ongoing communication. It was compliance through understanding. I realized then the cruel elegance of it. It didn't enslave, it recruited. And the payment wasn't obedience, it was responsibility. People ask the wrong question when they hear my story. They don't ask what did you see or what changed you. They ask, would you go back? as if our return were a matter of courage, as if bravery had anything to do with it. The truth is simpler and much harder to accept. I can't go back, not because the forest would stop me, but because it won't recognize me anymore. Once you've been used to maintain a boundary, you cease to belong cleanly to either side of it. You become the seam, and seams don't get reinserted once they've been stretched. I understood that fully about 6 months after I left the pines. That's when the dreams stopped being dreams. They didn't look like nightmares. They weren't cinematic. No wings, no screams, no forests swallowing light. They were quiet, administrative. I'd dream of standing in a grocery store aisle, staring at cereal boxes that didn't align properly on the shelf, or walking through a parking garage where the pillars were spaced wrong, not enough to notice consciously, but enough to make my chest tighten. In those dreams, I wasn't afraid. I was correcting. That's when I knew the forest had finished with me. It had internalized the function. The Jersey Devil was never meant to be a legend. Legends are static. They freeze things in symbolic amber. What it really was, what it still is, can't survive being understood too clearly. It exists in the space between attention and neglect, between belief and dismissal. It survives because people look away at the right moment. And now, so do I. I haven't been back to the Pine Barrens. I don't need to check maps to know I couldn't find the same entrance twice. Even if I stood in the same place, the angle would be wrong. The lyric would reject me. Some nights, I still hear echoes, not the scream, not fully. Just pressure changes in my skull when I cross certain thresholds. Old bridges, abandoned buildings, places where something once fit and no longer does. I don't investigate. That's part of the agreement. You might think that makes me a coward. You'd be wrong. It makes me functional. And that's what I need you to understand. If you've listened this far, the danger isn't the forest. The danger is in wanting to see it clearly. Curiosity, when sharpened into obsession, becomes a tool that doesn't care what it cuts. People who chase the Jersey Devil hoping for proof, footage, closure, they don't vanish because the forest hates them. They vanish because they refuse to stop pushing on a door that only opens inward. The pines don't want secrecy. They want disinterest. That's why I'm telling you this story the way I am, not to convince you, not to warn you, but to misalign you just enough that if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of a place that feels slightly wrong, a trail that goes quite too quickly, a clearing that seems to be waiting, you'll hesitate. You'll remember this without knowing why, and you'll turn back, not in fear, in recognition. I still live a normal life. I work, I pay bills, I laugh at the right times, I blend. But sometimes, when conversations drift toward mysteries and monsters, I feel that old pressure return, the quiet accounting. I choose my words carefully. I downplay. I distort. I redirect. I do my job. Because somewhere deep in a forest that refuses to be fully mapped, something still screams inward, not in pain, but in adjustment. And it doesn't need witnesses. It needs margins. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Some places are not meant to be understood. Some stories are not meant to resolve. And some doors are not locked. They are simply waiting for you to stop pushing. I was allowed to leave. That doesn't mean I was forgiven. It means I was trusted. And trust, once given, is heavier than fear. That's why I will never go back. And if you're wise, now that you've heard me, you won't either.